For a look at the economics behind Premier Lee's Latin America tour, Maricruz Magowan is here with us again, Vice President, National Economists Club. Good to see you.
Thank you, Lee.
So this is a pretty big deal, and Dan mentioned it earlier, but a lot of us forget, you know, we throw billions and millions around, and we forget that for some of these countries, it means the world to them.
It is very important. They are doing what the United States should have done a long time ago. But on the other hand, it's not going to be as easy as people think. So there are two problems in Latin America: corruption and lack of infrastructure. And China is offering the money for the infrastructure. But what about the corruption? That's something that China cannot resolve. And they are having all of these agreements with these presidents and these governments, but they don't have the continuity that you will see, for example, even in the United States. They can get into agreement with Ollanta Humala from Peru, but the next president may not agree with what Ollanta Humala did before.
Oh, and even if you do agree, the steps have to be taken, like there has to be an execution part. Let's talk about U.S.-Cuba. The countries that will most likely be impacted. We seem to be, let's be optimistic, the road to diplomatic relations is already set. It's going to happen whether it's next month, the month after, or next year. It actually doesn't really matter when it happens. We know the path is there. Who are the main beneficiaries around Latin America from this?
Well, let's start with Cuba. I think the regime, the Castro regime, are going to be the first ones to benefit. Because,
so they're happy about this.
Exactly, they are happy because they are controlling everything. That money is not going directly to the people. This is not a free market economy. It's
might some of the money go to the people? Might little money go to the people?
It will depend on who they want to give the money to. That is a problem. That is a real problem, and I think we will see that happening. Now, the other countries, Venezuela will benefit. Venezuela has always been in very good terms with Cuba, and they were helping them with oil when Cuba needed that. So I assume Cuba is going to help them now that Venezuela needs somebody to help them with their economy that is doing pretty badly. So I will say Cuba will be a second partner that will help. Then they have also some trade agreements and some business agreements with Brazil, with Colombia, so probably they can get some benefit from that. But I don't think it's going to be further than that. It's going to be limited unless Cuba changes the way they do business, and I don't think that's going to happen as long as the Castros are there in power.
Look, I mean, the devil's advocate saying, I know you're critical of this, but some people are saying that once this gets set in place, the Castro brothers would then perhaps liberalize a bit more because they see sort of the benefits of how this might be affecting their country, and therefore you will see some change through reforms. Do you not think that's going to happen?
I am not so optimistic about that because they have been there for 56 years. They could have seen these benefits a long time ago, and they didn't. And even after December 17, they kept having people, taking political prisoners. They didn't change. And then even Raul Castro went out and said the revolution has won, because even the United States now is believing on us. So I don't see any change of behavior from their part, unless they move out and they let the younger people to direct Cuba, then I will believe it.
The rest of Latin America, when we look at Peru, for example, and we heard from what Dan Collins talked about trying to bring down corruption and getting these deals in place, and where Premier Lee is there, and China obviously has had a very big presence in Latin America. We've seen that this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There's been an awful lot of coverage on this. Do you think that China is, I guess, benefiting from all this as well? Aside from just the trade deals, politically they're benefiting. They must be, because Latin America knows that here's China, here's the money, here's the money.
A big deal, because they are fulfilling the lack of demand for primary goods that China has and will keep having. Latin America is an excellent partner for China, and China is an excellent partner for Latin America. I think it's a very good deal. I think the idea of having the railway from the Pacific to the Atlantic is also an excellent idea in terms of infrastructure. It's something that, if it becomes a reality, will stay there for future generations. I think it's going to benefit everybody.
a lot of people have said, and we've had experts on before on the show, talk about China, the money, the factories, the jobs. A lot of people are concerned that the jobs, they want to make sure jobs, number one, stay for a long time, and the jobs are for the locals. Do you have that concern?
No. I always think in the long-term benefits. I am not the kind of economist that will only look at the short term. In the short term, it's going to be difficult. As I said, they have the problems with corruption, with regulations, over-regulation or under-regulations, the side agreements, environmental. Many people are concerned about the environmental impact. Labor, as you mentioned, if it's going to take away, employment from the nationals. But in the long term, they will have the infrastructure they need to have if they want to keep having some economic growth.
What's the next step? We see the business people on their tour. We see politicians on their tour from China. What's the next step of this relationship now with not just Peru, but with a number of countries in Latin America?
I think the next step should be the kind of exports that are going from Latin America. Right now, it's primary goods. So they sell cheap and they buy more expensive from China because it's a more value-added product. If they can diversify, if they can start exporting non-traditional goods, I think that should be the next step.
All right. Well, I'm sure a lot more announcements will come. Of course, this has been a very big week for relations with Latin America.
And a great week, I think, for both sides.
Always good to see you. Thank you.